In the previous episode, I finished working on the Patreon shrine. I filled up all of the gaps, replaced the pots, worked on all unfinished business. And now that the Patreon shrine is done and behind me, I now turn my attention to Project Do. It is this large strip of landscape along the fence, and historically it has been done in sections, so there's lots of stuff in it. In this episode, I'm going to walk you through some of the concepts I had in mind. I don't have a definite plan yet, but let's work on something here. Like what I always say, the first part of any landscaping session, for me at least, is planning. And it's a lot easier to do some planning if the whole thing is clean. I've engaged in a bit of cleanup so far. As you can see, there are no loose spots in the ground, except for the plants that are still directly planted in the ground. And this is something that I have to do next. I have moved all of the pots to the other side of the garden. That way I just have all of this space to move around, especially since I'll be doing a lot of heavy lifting and I do not want anything to impede my movement. Now, speaking of heavy lifting, as you know, the front tire of my wheelbarrow is punctured and I have to replace that soon. So I won't probably be able to work on moving the rocks until I have a properly working wheelbarrow, and that's something I might have to defer to some other time, which is why I think it's a good idea that I just focus on planning, on layout, and a little bit of Photoshop. Now, before I can proceed, there's a few things that I would need to think about. The first of which is, would I be reusing some of these plants in this spot? For sure, I might be placing some of the echeverias here, but I've resolved some time ago that I'll be removing all of the aeoniums from the wall and place it on the other side of the garden. As for the rest of these, I'm not yet sure where I'll be placing them, so I'll be temporarily moving them into these boxes. No, these trays. Now that that's out of the way, let's take a few photos and let's head over to Photoshop. That's you. Daddy, Nikki. Can see yourself? No, don't touch the keyboard. Hey. Hey. Can I bite your head? That was my little girl. I finally got her to sleep. She's a bit of a night owl too, like her dad. Her big brother is in bed already. I think he went to sleep about a couple of hours ago. Ish. Anyway, now that I'm free, let's fire up Photoshop. It's taking a while to load. And we're here. So as you saw earlier, I was cleaning up part of my garden, Project Do, and this time I am going to do a bit of planning, a bit of mock-up layouting, and I'm going to do that in Photoshop since I need to be able to visualize things, and sometimes it's easier if I can see it for myself visually. So going back to Photoshop, let me just load up some of the images that I took earlier. And there we go. Just making sure they're all here. Yep. So as you can see, I've gotten some photos at various angles, photos of the garden, and it should give you a good vantage point of each little section, each little part. It would give you a better idea of what we're trying to do here. So back to Photoshop. So we have this slightly overhead view, a view from the top. I think you could somewhat see myself here. There, that's me holding a camera. So let's just fit this on the screen. And yes, this is our base. Now there's a lot of things that I want to do here, and I think if you've been following my Facebook, you might have seen the photo that I've shared, and that was to create raise the whole thing. That was one of the ideas, and let me just show you what I mean. So essentially what I'm thinking of is to expand, make the divider go all the way through the entire stretch of the garden. And let me just mask this out just so it blends. There, starting to look like I have a proper border now. Okay, now let me just give you a better view. As you can see, the rock borders now occupy the entire stretch of the design, and all we have to do is to backfill the whole thing with soil. So let's just look for photos of soil. This one looks nice. Just place it in a new layer, and we've got this. Now, like I said, this is going to occupy the entire area. I think this is good enough. This brush is so soft, man. Let's lower this opacity a bit, just so I have a rough guide. I know where I can see where I'm masking. Right, I think that's good enough. Then let's just reveal the rocks again. Now, since I'm trying to raise the soil here, and I'm trying to recover as much of the rocks that I can. If I remove the soil here, you could see that there's a bunch of rocks on the left side, the left edge. What I plan to do is to remove all of those rocks and place all of this timber, place a timber as the edger. That way I save a bit on rocks and I'm able to reuse the rocks elsewhere. In this case, it might be this rock border that you see here out in the front. So let's pretend that I've already backfilled the soil. So the soil level should be higher, something like this. The colors don't match, so let's just work on the color balance. I think this is better. Maybe I can make it a bit more brown. There. This soil looks rich. Now we're going to start with this, just covering more of the soil, more of the ground I mean. And there, we now have a raised bed. I still need a way to be able to move around, to get up close with my plants, you know, not make the vantage point too far away. That way I could appreciate them up close. And that means that I still need to add stepping stones or a footpath somewhere in between. I have about 10 pieces of the schist, or was it schist? Schist stones. These are the flat metamorphic rock that I'm using. Let me show you what I mean. Something like this. This one, exactly this one. Let's just remove the background. And gone. So I'm thinking that I should just continue placing them here. Add more of them. 2, 3, 4. I probably have 3 here already. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now we reach an inflection point here. I'm thinking that there's 2 ways for me to do this. The first method, the original idea that I had, was to terminate stepping stones here, which means that the only way to get here is through the right side near the stream, the succulent stream. And I'm a bit uncomfortable with that, especially since I've got little kids and they want to be, with kids, they want to be able to go through something, and dead ends like these would be quite annoying for them, and they might end up just stepping on my plants just to get out. So in this case, I might do this, terminate this here. Now I'm making this larger just for perspective, since this is closer to us. Let's just space them properly and size them properly. Just one more. Here we go. Now this is assuming that everything is raised. I need to be able to create some sort of steps for them. So this one is actually lower, this is higher. And just to be able to sell this idea, this look, I'll be adding a bit of shadows. There. Now imagine this is dug down, just to give a vantage, no, not a vantage point, but a step from the ground level. So this is one step higher and another step higher. Essentially there's 2 steps: ground level, mid level, and a top level. Let's do the same here. I would want to hide, I guess, which means this would be just soil. Oops, sorry. There. Now this one, this rock that you see here, would be deeper than the rest, which means that I would also need to add a shadow here. This is ground level, maybe this is half. We have to add a bit of shadow here. There. I think that's a good enough illusion. So we have all of these stepping stones, footpath if you will, and starting to take shape, man. Now I'm just going to fix the blending right here on the right side. I need a softer brush. And maybe, yeah, I might have to add more rocks here. So let's just clone this one, duplicate layer. Sorry about that. Just scaling it down to make the rocks, you know, perspective, make it the right size. And we're just going to fix the mask here. Alright, so we now have borders. We now have borders on both sides. This is the entrance to the raised bed. And yeah, this is looking good so far. So now we have the base of the design. The whole thing is a large raised bed, which means that I would need a whole lot of soil. The only way for me to find out exactly how much soil I would need is to measure the whole thing and see how many cubic meters, how much volume is required. And that would give me a good idea of how much soil and pebbles I would need to order in bulk from Soilworks. Yeah, just to backfill this whole area. So far, I've shown you the base. I haven't really thought about what sort of fixtures, what sort of designs I'll be making in the spaces that you see here. But basically, there would be a couple of, let me just mark out the areas. So, in blue, this is going to be my agavoides display area. This part here. And I'm choosing this space because I currently have my agavoides out in a more sunny spot, and they seem to be not doing so well during summer. Some of them are almost burnt, not really burning, but they are pretty dry, pretty dormant, and they are very susceptible to damage. A lot of bugs, a lot of insects like eating them. And since they are not actively growing, they end up not being able to recover quickly from the damage, which means that I have to either shade them or move them out. Now in this case, I'm moving them out. Another section here, I'm going to mark it with red. This is going to be my large Echeveria display area. This is basically where I'll be free planting all of my larger cultivars, because this spot right here towards the further away from the fence is going to be receiving a lot more light compared to closer to the fence. So yeah. Now along the fence, I know I'm going to backfill this with soil, but I do not want to put too much pressure against the fence because it might, you know, it's a shared property, it's not just ours. So I need to support this somehow. One of the things that I've been looking into is lesser blocks. These are concrete blocks, hollow blocks basically. So I might just be adding a whole lot of this at the edge. I don't have to put them together with mortar, cement, no need. I just have to stack them down and have the soil act as mortar. I think that would work. That is good enough. And that way, at least all the pressure of the soil would be pushing against the better blocks and not the wall, not the fence. So yeah, these two things here are what I have definitely planned so far. Another thing that crossed my mind is a bit of some sort of branding, and I might just get one of my bowls. So bowl garden, empty. These are weird bowls. Anyway, now imagine maybe just this one. Oh, it's too small, too tiny. Yeah, this one. Let's pretend that I had this bowl in the garden. And let's remove the background. Should be good enough. I'm thinking of, let's just remove this. Nothing else. Yeah, I'm thinking of filling up the bowl, and not necessarily plants but rocks, I guess. I'll be recreating my logo, my Cerriscapades logo inside the bowl. So this bowl should be around this size. I'll half bury it somewhere here, somewhere there, I guess, or could be here, but I think this spot is more prominent, or somewhere here. I don't know yet. Basically, I'll be placing my logo here, and let me just pull up a copy of that. And like I said, I'm going to recreate this in a bowl, which means that I will be using a combination of black and white pebbles. Somewhere here. I'm just going to make sure I have the... There, I think that's good enough. Boom. Going to create a group. Boom. Place that there. That way I could there you go. Yeah, let's pretend that's the bowl. There, something like that. I think having something like this, my logo, somewhere in the garden, somewhere very visible, would make it instantly recognizable, you know? Yeah, I think I need to have some sort of mark here. So, this is one way to do that. Another thing that I haven't really decided is this stretch along the fence here. I might do some sort of display area. Either I would raise this even further. I'm just adding tiny pedestals made out of, I don't know, wood or rocks, and maybe have plants inside pots or something. But maybe even a shelf. I don't know. I haven't really decided, but yeah, it would be a good idea to display some of the smaller plants here, because not only is this space along the fence more conducive to the growth of small plants, since they would be shaded for most of the day anyway, but keeping them in the back means that you are forced to go around and look closer. And it's the same principle as billboards, you know. They are really large, but you view them from afar so that their resolution isn't really that high. It's more about the viewing distance, how far the viewer is from the subject. And with smaller plants as subjects, you'll want the viewer to be closer, so we provide a footpath for them. Yeah, I think I'll run with this. I have no idea on any of the structures on the fixtures, the structures that I am going to build on top of the mound, on top of the raised bed. But one thing's for sure, I need to work on the raised bed. So one step at a time. This is a very early draft of the design. The only thing that I am going to do for sure so far is the raised bed and the footpath. I haven't really decided the placement of everything else, so I'll cross a bridge when we get there, I guess. If you have any suggestions, any ideas that you want to put forth, just make sure to add them in the comments down below and let me know. I'll be considering your suggestions, your ideas, and if I really like it, I'm going to include it here. And of course, I'll be naming it after you, or you could give me a name. I'll give you naming rights, or at least I'll consider the name that you gave, because I don't want this to be a garden face or something. So yeah, I'll see you in the next episode. Bye. Cerriscapades is made possible with the support of my Patreon sponsors. Patreon allows you to support content creators like me with a small monthly donation. You can pledge your support by heading over to patreon.com/Cerriscapades. If you're in Australia, I've got some of my plants for sale. Check out my plant shop at cerriscapades.com/theplant shop with dashes.